Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Well, as you can see, it's just me tonight. The way I see it, Monday Mailbag works best if I can just rapid fire between you guys and my answers. So for tonight, we're mixing your live questions with some that have been emailed to me and to our sales team. Be certain to check out my Watch You Want Watch Reviews channel, where in the last 24 hours we've posted some seriously hot hardware. But my pure wrist review channel is back up and running with the move to Philadelphia. There was a little bit of lag time. Again, we are charging at full speed ahead on Watch You Want Watch Reviews, my other channel on YouTube. Subscribe for your daily quick hits of luxury watches. Now, I'm happy to say that we have a new feature coming on Watch You Want Watch Reviews, which is going to be a long-term review. We're going to do a full week to 2 weeks on the wrist with some of the hottest references in high horology. We're going to actually do everything from your entry-level dive watch to your haute de gamme grand complication, but not for 5 minutes, not for 6, and not for 7. A full half a month and my impressions of what it was like living with that watch. That's going to be our new features. Subscribe to Watch You Want Watch Reviews to see it. Okay, so as in the auto world, we're going with these long-term reviews, and I wanted to ask you on that note, would you guys have any interest in an occasional feature on autos, an occasional auto feature on this channel? Now, I know Ariel did that on a blog to watch and got a rancid reaction, but I think that was more because he reviewed a purple Infiniti QX80 than the idea of crossover content. Now, I prefer to live in subdivisions, not drive them, and I can understand if you guys weren't so into that truck, but if you're into autos, sound off below the video. We can have some of those on the channel now that we've got resources. All right, straight into the questions. Christopher H. posed a this or that to me, and it's really this, that, or the other for you old Seinfeld fans there. Okay, early 2000s throwback edition. Christopher H. asks, Tim, which of these would you rather have? The Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Perpetual Calendar. For those keeping score, we're talking the 37mm steel black dial edition, Q149-84-7A from the late 90s. The IWC Da Vinci Perpetual Calendar Chronograph, reference 3750. For me, I'm going to make it the Dash 30 because the Dash 30 is my favorite version of that watch with steel and black dial. Or would you rather have the Blancpain Le Mans Perpetual Calendar Flyback Chronograph from the same period? Again, this is going to be, for those of you keeping score who want to Google these things, reference 2585F-1130-71, so it comes with the X71 bracelet on top of everything else. Let me roll through these watches and then draw a conclusion. Okay. The Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Perpetual from the late 90s, 37mm steel, automatic. This is IWC's Perpetual Calendar module on top of a Jaeger-LeCoultre 889 base caliber. It does have the most beautiful movement of this group by far, and of the three watches, it's the only one that has a display case back. It is also by far the thinnest of these watches in spite of the modular perpetual. For me, this is pretty close to the perfect complication because you can use it every day. I still date letters, I still date emails, I still fill in forms in company healthcare applications using calendar watches, so this remains very useful. But remember, the IWC Da Vinci Perpetual 3750, which had an incredibly long run from about 1985 to 2002-2003, was a 39mm stainless steel perpetual calendar chronograph with an aventurine moon phase disc that was stunning by itself and deserving of framing in miniature. This is everything the JLC is, plus a chronograph, plus a little bit tougher because at heart it's a Valjoux 7750. Plus, the watch featured a dive watch plexiglass to get enough loft over all of the indications of the perpetual calendar. So for purely pragmatic reasons, the timepiece has a very vintage and highly bubble-formed plexiglass, so you get that distortion effect off-axis that you love in vintage dive watches. For me, the IWC Da Vinci Perpetual is hard to beat because it's so polarizing and yet you get so much watch. Hinge lugs are going to make friends or enemies with nothing in between, but it's important and it served as the basis for the entire 2017 Da Vinci catalog. But then there's the Blancpain Le Mans Perpetual Calendar Flyback Chronograph, which gives you this, that, and the other. The Perpetual Calendar of the JLC, it gives you the chronograph of the IWC, and it gives you flyback functionality and a full bracelet. For me, pre-owned in steel, 38 millimeters, 38 and a half really, this is hard to beat. This is a watch that sold for about $35,000 new in the early 2000s and now lists for about a third of that in good condition with accessories, boxes, and papers. The underlying Frédéric Piguet automatic chronograph caliber is high horology, beautifully made, ultra slim for a chronograph and an automatic one, integrated column wheel vertical clutch, very nice. This is a watch that needs to be revisited by contemporary Blancpain management in order to get in touch with the brand's soul and understand where the mark can go to build an identity beyond the 50 fathoms. So of the 3 watches you offered me, Christopher, I am going to go with the Blancpain Le Mans Perpetual Calendar Flyback Chronograph because it's just the total package. And with steel and a black dial, I cannot say no. All right, guys joining tonight, thank you so much. Nader, Alexi, UXXV, Ben, CQ, an old friend of the house joining us, JPS3B, ST3, Joe S, Mr. Muttonhollow, welcome guys, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to do a quick wrist check as you guys are asking. And my buddy Brian on the camera, that's my Master Compressor Extreme World Alarm Tides of Time. It was a limited edition from 2009. This was the first JLC I bought. And you can see I tried to cram an entire collection into one watch. It's an alarm, it's a watch that can get wet, it's a watch with a quick release strap system and a leather accessory for dressing up, it's a world timer, it's automatic, it's tough, it's steel, it's titanium. This is a watch, quite frankly, that was probably a little too ambitious in its conception, but as a guy just getting into luxury watches and still in the Navy when I bought it, I have to say this thing tickled me pink, and it's big and blue. All right, so guys, questions coming through. CQ mentioning he loves the JLC. CQ, this watch is better suited for your wrist size than mine. I wear it a little bit sheepishly, but I absolutely love it. Okay, so John W. asks, hi Tim, I've heard that scratched platinum can be refinished without removing metal. Is this true? I've also heard that platinum watches, this is John W. continuing, I've also heard that platinum watches are harder than gold because platinum is harder than gold. Okay, so a couple things I got to address. First, in terms of refinishing platinum, watch refinishers hate refinishing platinum because it's so soft. It's not harder than gold in its alloyed form. But because it is so butter soft, a very skilled refinisher can close the channels that are cut into metal. So if you scratch a trench along the surface of your watch, a good refinisher should be able to close that seam without removing much metal at all. Now, of course, big dents and gouging is going to require the same kind of laser welding and or leveling of the metal that you see on gold and steel and titanium, but there are potential situations where platinum can be refinished without removing metal. Now, in terms of hardness, pure 100% platinum and 100% yellow gold or 24 karat, yes, the platinum would be harder, but because 18 karat is the jeweler's standard and the watch standard for gold, and 95%, and 18 karat is about 75% pure, and 95% is the purity standard for platinum, in the end, yellow, rose, and especially white gold will be considerably harder than jewelry and horology grade platinum. So don't count on much scratch resistance, if any, from a platinum case. It's about as butter soft as you can get. Okay, guys, welcome. I can see Nicola's joined us, Trevor's joined us, Austin's joined us, Meltdown GRFX is joining us. Okay, so right now, I've got a question from Boris A, and he's got a complicated one. Hi Tim, I'm looking to buy my first substantial watch for between $5,000 and $10,000 US. I'm open to both new and pre-owned options, dress and sports watches, but I want to avoid the big three, Rolex, Omega, and Breitling, since these are quite common in my office, and frankly, I want something different than the norm. Well, Boris, you've got a lot of options, especially since you're open to pre-owned. That really takes what would normally be the $15,000 to $20,000 watch and brings it just back into the upper reaches of your price range. So let's start with a watch that's firmly in your price range, and then we'll get more ambitious. The Zenith El Primero Striking 10th. Now, this is a watch that, depending on Condition, accessories, strap, or bracelet, you're going to see between $5,500 and $7,000 US. Generally 42 millimeters stainless steel automatic. This one came out in 2012, so it's been around for a while. There's good selection, and yet the watches haven't been extensively refinished. You know, the original owners haven't lost all the accessories. You should be able to get a watch that looks more or less new old stock. Chronograph with a wonderful heritage. The striking 10th semi-foudroyant. It is a flying seconds hand that makes extraordinarily fast circuits of the dial, so you can read the individual increments of the 1/10 of a second El Primero chronograph. 100-meter water resistant, suitable for dress and for sport. Built by a manufacturer that is also guaranteed to be around 10, 20, 30 years from now to service that exotic mechanism. So it's a great choice, but be advised, there's also a Stratos flyback version of this watch that adds more size at 45 millimeters and more complication with the flyback functionality. If you want a bigger dial or you've got a bigger wrist, consider the Stratos flyback version, which is available at similar pricing. Now, from another sort of mid-volume high horology house with a robust reputation as a manufacturer and actually not too far away from Zenith is Girard-Perregaux with the Girard-Perregaux WWTC chronograph. Now, these have been around forever, since the early 2000s. The ones you're going to be looking at pre-owned are going to be titanium and steel in the sub $10,000 price range. The 43 millimeter pre-2013 version, stainless steel or tie, but you're getting so much in that stainless steel or tie case. World time, a date, a chronograph, a manufacturer base movement. You're getting a watch that is immensely legible, has massive presence on the wrist, but enough delicacy of design and detailing that you can wear it with a suit or formal attire with a straight face. So, sporty but not outlandish from a great watchmaking name that deserves to be mentioned alongside Zenith, JLC, GO, and UN. Pardon me, guys. Catered lunch today. Pizza, pepperoni, spicy. Probably the best known modern product of Girard-Perregaux, so there is borderline iconic status to this one, and an almost infinite range of variants and special editions, so you have your pick of almost any dial color combination. Now, if you want to go a little bit more affordable and you want to go a little bit more compact but still have that versatility of a sports watch you can wear as a dress watch, I recommend the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Compressor Memovox. Master Compressor Memovox came out in 2002. It was the first of the master compressors. At $5,500 to $7,000, you're getting a lot of steel complication. This is a watch with an internal rotating dive bezel, 100-meter water resistance, a date, an alarm, automatic winding. Increasingly recognized by JLC enthusiasts as a modern milestone watch for the brand, this was also the brand's first real sports watch since the 1970s. The solid gold caseback medallion ensures that the watch has richness and refinement without ostentation. It's not something you see on the wrist. You enjoy it when you take your watch off or put it on at bedside. And the compressor crowns, I'll admit, and Brian can show a close-up of my watch here, but the compressor crown system that JLC invented is love or hate. Some people love the ease of using these things. The winglets make them easy to grip when your hands are gloved, sweaty, when they're wet. That's basically how a sports-style crown should be. Like the Panerai locking lever, it's an original idea that replaces the conventional Rolex screw-down crown system that's been around since the 1920s. And it does limit wear and tear on your crown seals. But again, if you're not into the look, I would say wait, maybe you'll warm up. I remember when I first saw them in the early 2000s, I didn't know what to think. But the bottom line is they work well. Now, these watches were around new for about 2002 to 2009. The last of them were probably sold from 2010 to 2012, which means there are still a lot of good condition examples that have never been polished, that have all boxes, all accessories. There's no reason to compromise on condition or boxed set here, and that's what you should get, fully equipped, all the toppings for the $7,000 top of the range version, from that $5,500 to $7,000 range. If you're interested, JLC does have bracelet and strap accessories, rubber straps and steel bracelets that you can add to the watch at additional cost to change the look, change the feel, or increase the durability. Now, the final watch that I'm going to recommend might take some hunting, but they're generally available out of Germany where they were made. And this final suggestion is the Nivrel Repetition automatic, generally 42 millimeters in stainless steel. You're going to see these in the $6,000 to $10,000 range, sometimes $5,000 to $10,000 range. And the reason the range is so big is because there haven't been too many sold. There are rarely a lot on the market, and because there isn't a whole lot of sales history or current marketplace for the watch, people really don't know how to price them. So you may actually get one for a lot less money than the watch is worth. At least in practical terms, I can't think of any easier way to get a time-chiming watch. Now, once upon a time, in the 1970s, modular complication specialist Dubois de Praz, we know them mostly for calendar and chronograph modules, created a 5-minute repeater that would chime the hours and then the 5 minutes after the hours. Now later, these were sold to Kellock, which modified them. Kellock was another modular specialist that sold complications around the market in Switzerland. When Breitling bought Kellock in the early 90s, Nivrel, a small German specialist, purchased the remaining Kellock stock of these 5-minute repeating movements and started releasing them in a series of Nivrel repetition models that continued right up until the last decade. These watches offer a lot of function. Automatic, tough, still serviceable because the basic movement is a Dubois de Praz hooked up to an ETA base, and I don't think you're going to find something more unusual in this price range. It's not a sports watch, though it does have 5 ATM water resistance, solidly more than 3 ATM dress. It's just its own breed. There's almost nothing else like it, and I guarantee you, even if you go to a red bar the size of Yankee Stadium, no one else is going to have one. So consider the Nivrel Repetition, Boris. All right, so guys, question coming in. Okay, this is from... this is from Alexander. Did Tim just recommend a JLC? Hey, I recommended others. Okay, this is from Mr. Mutton Hollow. What do you think of the Tiffany stamp on a Patek? Okay, this is something that's been done for eons, and you'll find it from the era of 19th century pocket watches to the present epoch. I think it's really model dependent. There are some Tiffany specific models like the 5396 and the T150 that I think have a little bit more currency because they're unique models, not just dial stampings. I will say this, I believe any Patek Philippe retailed by Tiffany, if you have the original proof of purchase, can be sent back to Tiffany and retroactively Tiffany'd. So for me, that diminishes the significance a bit. In the modern era, I see a lot more of these. And because, again, any Tiffany retailed Patek can be retroactively redialed to represent the Tiffany signature, I don't think it's quite as special as the truly rare, the models that have been created exclusively for Tiffany, and grand complications that feature the Tiffany signature. But by the time you're into the realm of something like a 5216 that's Tiffany signed, most of the value and the attraction of that watch is going to be the fact that it's a Patek Philippe application piece. So it adds some value, but to me, I don't go gaga over Tiffany-signed dials. To me, it means nothing. I have no relationship with Tiffany. I love Patek Philippe. So I would say, if it's worth it to you, then it's worthwhile. Otherwise, the market has spoken, and there are tiers of Tiffany, from the mass market sports watch that's Tiffany signed retroactively, up to the special editions and the grand complications. Other questions coming in. Tim, I've noticed you've never reviewed the reissue, this is from Noah R. You've never reviewed the reissue of the Speedmaster Mark II racing dial or otherwise on YouTube. What are your thoughts on the watch? Well, I think it's a good a good price point piece. I think it was smart for Omega to come out with a watch that used an earlier adaptation of the coaxial escapement to an existing movement to make a more affordable timepiece. I think there's still room for that kind of watch in the Omega catalog, and the march up market has left some Omega enthusiasts behind. For those who don't want to get into the hornet's nest of vintage with Franken watches, bad dial refinishes, misrepresented watches, sports watches that are no longer water resistant, movements that are no longer serviceable, pieces that are no longer in stock. I think these Mark IIs, racing dial and otherwise, are great offerings, and have no fear about the old 3300 series chronographs. Omega has been able to troubleshoot the 3300s and the 2500s, the adapted first generation coaxials. They are now quite tough. What they'll never be is as elegant in their engineering as the 8500s and the 9300s and their progeny, but this is a great watch that I think appeals to the late 90s Omega customer, the guy who bought the Schumacher Speedy Reduceds, the guy who bought the original Bond Seamaster, the Pierce Brosnan 2531. This is an olive branch to that guy to keep him in the Omega brand even as they go up market. So I like it. As long as you don't really want the vintage piece and feel like you're settling, I don't see any issues with this. I think it was a strong offering when it came out 2 years ago. I think it's a strong offering now. Okay, so questions coming through. This is from Dimitri. Tim, good to see you again. Okay, not a question, but I do appreciate the commentary. Now, Dimitri does have a question for us, and the question is what I think of the PAM 682. And unless I am wildly mistaken, that was this year's 42mm Panerai submersible. Now traditionally the submersibles with the rotating bezel, the ISO compliant dive watches, not diveable watches like most Panerai, but actual statutory dive watches, they've been big. They've been 44mm, they've been 47mm. In the nightmarishly huge Panerai PAM 341, they were 60mm. For me, the 682 and its rose gold counterpart is a wearable, handsome, decently proportioned, and welcome addition to the Luminor catalog. Some of us just can't wear a 44 dive watch. You go submersible with Panerai, things get big, thick, and bulky very fast. So I like this one a lot. I liked it a lot when I saw it at SIHH, and I think for me, the most important thing about it is that proportionally and in profile, it still looks right. It doesn't look awkward. Shrinking the Luminor case worked perfectly for this watch. It's a little bit of a disappearing act to make those 2mm vanish and keep the proportions and iconic profile of that watch. But if you've got the smaller wrist and you've been waiting years to wear a submersible, this is your opportunity. So, Dimitri, good question. And I have another one. This is from Nimit V. He's asking, and I think Sean's got our graphics here, some accessible watches that he's considering. So Nimit V asks, so today I went to the mall to buy my first Swiss watch, and I looked at so many that now I am in a dilemma about which one I should pick. Here are the three watches I liked in no specific order. Okay, so Nimit liked the TAG Heuer 01. So this is the big open dial automatic chronograph that debuted back in 2015. A lot of people felt this was kind of the first of the Jean-Claude Biver era TAG Heuer installments as he started to remake the brand as then interim president and chief of watchmaking at LVMH Watch Maison. It does look a little bit like a junior Hublot, but that's not a bad thing because the price is right. At $5,300 with an exclusive chronograph caliber that you won't find outside the TAG Heuer brand, I think this is a good value. For me, the proof was actually holding it in my hand. When I got a chance to do some videos for the Govberg channel, yes, I have a third channel, I was impressed by the solidity of the watch, the fit, the finish, the detailing. I think in the case of this one, the initial impression might be, well, this is a bombastic, open dial, flamboyant South Beach candidate, but I don't think I could wear this in earnest. It's a lot more subtle in its detail and upscale in its materials than you might think just from seeing an airbrushed photo on the internet. So 45mm, it's big, but it's wearable. It has a very nice exclusive column wheel automatic chronograph caliber inside. 100 meters, a robust strap, very comfortable on the wrist. This was a strong offering from TAG and it remains so. The other watch that Nimit is considering is the IWC Aquatimer Cousteau chronograph. This is the reference 376805, blue dial, steel case, 44 millimeters, date with a chronograph, and IWC's proprietary safe dive, secure internal rotating bezel. It's a very distinctive watch and possibly the most distinctive of this group. The TAG Heuer's got a little bit of Hublot DNA in it. The IWC Cousteau chronograph looks like nothing else with the exception of other IWCs. But I have to say, it is big. Now it has a cool Cousteau case back, and personally with the Glashutte 7750 base movement, I would rather have a cool engraving on the case back than see a rather plain automatic winding chronograph caliber that's workmanlike and tough and accurate, but nothing much to see aesthetically. I like the Cousteau case back. The challenge for me is that this watch is massive on the wrist. Over 17 millimeters is a real challenge to deal with. Now I don't necessarily have to fit my watch under a dress cuff. You can see this watch is pretty thick. It's about 16 millimeters. It will slide underneath my sleeve, but I don't think, and let me just show you what 16 millimeters looks like above the wrist. The Cousteau is bulkier and bigger than this, and it's going to be a hang-up. This is not going to be a watch you can wear with a tighter cuff or a French cuff or a tighter sleeve. So I would say consider your third selection, Nimit, which is really quite different than the other two, because first, it's not a chronograph, and second, let's just keep clear, pricing for the TAG Heuer was $5,300, pricing for the IWC is about $7,050. The Tudor Pelagos Blue at $4,395 with a bracelet and an accessory strap is a real value. Now you're going to lose the chronograph functionality, but with a ceramic insert unidirectional rotating dive bezel, I don't feel like you're losing the ability to time reasonable intervals. Like, I don't time stuff that's much over an hour, and for me, just reading a dive bezel aligned with a minute hand is easier, more intuitive, and more practical. Plus, it'll reduce your service costs down the line. Now, 42 millimeters in titanium with a very robust accessory set. I really like the Pelagos as the watch I would go with. Again, Tudor being the sister brand of Rolex, it will be around forever to service this watch and provide parts. Not that TAG or IWC are going anywhere, just that you're in the same kind of safety cradle when you're working with Tudor. 70-hour power reserve, in-house chronometer caliber, silicone hairspring for that amagnetic resistance. It's just a little bit tougher than a normal sports watch. I do like the fact that the bracelet, although priced far more accessibly, is still leagues better than what a Rolex bracelet was 10 years ago. I'm not really sure where Tudor cuts costs to bring this watch in at a price point, but the bracelet feels like what a Rolex titanium bracelet would feel like if Rolex worked in titanium. So very impressed with the dive extension. This is the one I would get of the three, honestly. But I have some others for you to consider. In the same price class, in the same product class, consider the 44 millimeter stainless steel Omega Seamaster Diver 300 meter coaxial chronograph. $6,000 US. This is the closest living relative to the original Bond style Seamaster chronographs of the 90s. You're getting a lot more refinement though than you would have gotten in that era. Now we've got a coaxial movement. Now we have a dial with applied indices and markers and Omega logo, not printed. Now we have a bezel with a ceramic insert. It's just richer than it was back in the day, and priced at $6,000. This is a watch that offers good value and deserves to be considered alongside the $7,000 IWC Cousteau chronograph. Also, since we like Tudor and we've established that they're an excellent value, I would say consider the 42 millimeter Tudor Heritage Chrono. Now I like it in blue, it's also available with a gray dial. 150 meter water resistance, so you're not giving up much. This is a nice watch that offers a lot of functionality. It's a dress watch, it's a sports watch, it could be your only watch. Great value on a bracelet with accessory strap. And again, 42 millimeters more manageable than the might of the 45 millimeter TAG or the 44 millimeter chunky IWC. Again, $4,425. This is one to consider. Finally, TAG Heuer. Let's consider something else from within TAG's family. Since you like chronographs and you like TAG, and I like TAG's value proposition, let's consider the TAG Heuer Aqua Racer Caliber 16 automatic chronograph with ceramic bezel insert. $3,500, 43 millimeters, ceramic bezel insert, and 300-meter water resistance. This is a watch that offers a lot of content, a lot of value, bulletproof, basically a Glashutte 7750 in high spec. I don't see you going wrong with this watch, and it leaves some bullets in the chamber for another watch. Consider for the $7,050 price of the IWC, you could probably get the TAG Heuer Aqua Racer caliber 16 with ceramic bezel insert and a pre-owned Tudor Pelagos. You could have them both. So that's something, that's a powerful incentive to consider the TAG. So guys, let me double check what's going on in our chat box here. I see Captain Zed has joined us, and he's mentioning that my wife just bought a pre-owned 95 ladies Datejust for our daughter turning 21. Do you agree with me that irrespective of warranty claim that she should have it water tested? Yeah, I would. A watch that's over 20 years old, that's designed to be worn more or less full time, I've found that ladies are tough on their watches. Like, I've seen a lot of Cartier tanks with minimal water resistance that have spent every day of their working lives on the wrist of the owner through car washes, dog washes, dog walks, gardening, showers, dips in the pool. And I think especially if something like a Datejust, which is a quasi-sports watch, or at least a sporty watch, it's important to make sure that it lives up to the assumption the owner will make, that it's water resistant. So yeah, absolutely have it water tested. You're buying something pre-owned, everyone says, yeah, we're going to give you a pre-owned warranty. The question is, if it gets water damaged in the interim, are they going to repair something damaged because of an incidental? I would absolutely have the watch water tested, and if it fails water test, then call in that pre-owned warranty, but not before. Don't put it in the water until you have it water tested. And that's the case for any watch over 3 years old that you buy pre-owned. That's why we test in-house, to make sure watches still meet their water test ratings before we sell them at Govberg and Watch You Want. Okay, so more questions coming through. Man, the chat box is flying tonight. Tim, what's the deal with Franck Muller watches? This is Nana Odoro. Franck Muller is a brand that is a little bit hard to categorize. For the most part, Franck Muller is no longer associated. His business partner, Vartan Sermakis, was always the business mind behind the brand. He was responsible for a lot of the styling, the marketing. He built the Watchland group that, you know, for a period contained everything from Rodolphe to Martin Braun to Custos to Franck Muller, and the brand was built, even though Franck Muller is technically the most successful ever member of the AHCI in commercial terms, the brand was really built on the idea that ETA calibers in a high spec with a platinum rotor cased up in a nice and generally unconventionally shaped case could command a significant price premium on the basis of style and the name on the dial. So for me, there are some Franck watches that are great to collect. I like the Transamerica Alarm. I think anything with a Schild 5008 caliber, which is a great alarm GMT, is an awesome buy, especially in steel. These aren't going to be the tonneau shapes, these are going to be the round case Franck watches. I think the Crazy Hours is fun and inventive. I think if you have the money to buy something like the Eternitas, one of the real grand complications, which they call the world premieres, you're really shopping in a different category of Franck Muller watch. You're buying something that's essentially built by a hired gun haute de gamme watch engineer, basically what F.P. Journe did for the first 20 years of his career. You're not really buying a Franck Muller, you're buying a Franck Muller branded independent masterpiece, and you're getting what you pay for. And the nice thing is, it's a stable company that will be able to service that monster for years to come. So there are advantages to buying the ultra haute de gamme Franck Muller, but if you're looking at something in a Curvex case with an ETA 2892 hitched up to a platinum rotor, you're basically getting something best presented in practical terms as a more luxuriously finished version of a ETA-powered Omega. And I will say Franck Muller makes beautiful cases, they make beautiful dials, wonderful presentation. Just know that for the most part what you're getting doesn't justify the moniker Master of Complications on the case back. They're good buys pre-owned. And if you want to buy a grand complication, again, nice to know the thing will be serviceable at the company that sponsored it. So a huge dichotomy between the high-end watches and the mass market watches. Okay, horology blog. Okay, Mike K asking, like your collection, did you sell your Reverso? Is that question for me? No, I never sell. I never ever sell. Okay, so this is a question. Tim, why did Patek switch from screws to pins for the Nautilus bracelet and other bracelets as well? Honestly, I think you and I both know the answer to that. So I think what's unsaid says just as much. Okay, so now this is a question from Marce, hope I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, thought on the new Sea Dweller with the Cyclops Eye magnifier. It's weird. To me, that's a weird touch to add. I don't love it. And one of the folks at our office actually had a keepsake that Rolex was handing out that was a 50 underneath a giant Cyclops eye, and I looked at it for 5 minutes and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then the owner is like, well, it's the Sea Dweller 50 keepsake. It's a paperweight. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't associate the Cyclops with the Sea Dweller. I didn't make that connection. So here's the thing. Probably one of the best Sea Dwellers ever made, qualitatively in terms of materials, workmanship, total value. It's a great watch. Personally, I prefer the previous and short-lived Sea Dweller 40, but this is a good watch qualitatively. I think it would have been really cool, and I could have forgiven the Cyclops if they had written something like, you know, Submariner 4000 and brought back that nomenclature on the dial in red. That would have been too cool. So great watch. I disagree with the Cyclops. Overall, if you're on the fence about buying it, get it. It's a lovely timepiece. You won't regret it. Once it's on your wrist, you're going to love it. And it fits much better than the Deep Sea. The difference is not 1 millimeter. The difference is a world of ergonomic. Trust me. Okay, so a question coming through. Wow. Yikes, guys, you fly through. But before I jump to the last of our questions tonight, Kenny J asks, Tim, I'm hoping to visit Watch You Want in early August, and I want to look at a few watches that are in your inventory. Full disclosure, I'm usually drawn to simple time only or time and date watches, but I'm thinking about getting a calendar complication. Now this guy has an important and impressive and comprehensive collection. Sports watches, dress watches, all haute de gamme, plus a Rolex. He has a Patek Philippe Calatrava 5296R sector dial. He has a Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711A white dial, so he's got a hardcore sports watch in there. FP Journe Chronomètre Bleu. He has a Chronomètre Souverain in platinum. He has an A Lungo und Zona Saxonia automatic. And to top it all off, his workhorse, a Rolex Submariner. Okay, so here is his list of watches he's considering. And then I'm going to give you two that I like, that he should consider. He's considering the A Lungo und Zona Lango 1 Platinum with black dial. This is the reference 101.035, the Darth Vader with the black dial and the black grand date. 38.5 millimeters, it's the traditional size, it's the original movement, 29,500. This is iconic. If you own just one Langa, this is the one to own. A great version of Langa's most important watch and one of the only holdovers from the original 1994 4-watch lineup. Yeah, if you're thinking of buying this, no regrets, no second thoughts, you can't go wrong, unless you're looking for a complex calendar. This is another dress watch to enter your collection, and just keep in mind, he's not happy with the size of the dial. At 38.5 millimeters, this watch is a little bit smaller than he would like. He's accepting that trade-off because it's so iconic, but he's also considering, in a larger case format and a tonneau shape, the Patek Philippe Gondola 5135G with gray dial. Now this is a watch at 32,500 that costs a little more at 51 millimeters lug to lug and over 30 millimeters across the broad of the case. It's got a big footprint. Annual calendar released in the early 2000s, now discontinued, automatic winding. This is a watch that he likes because of the calendar complication, because it's a signature Patek complication. Patek did invent the annual calendar in 1996. He likes the look of the non-round case, but he needs to see how it'll fit. So he would trade his Saxonia for this. Do I really want another Patek Philippe using a 324? Another trade-off to consider. Finally, he's considering, with the same 324 annual calendar movement, ironically, a Patek Philippe Nautilus 5726A. Now, of course, this is a sports watch with the annual calendar to complement his 5711, but it's going to be another duplicative caliber 324 base, 40.5 millimeters in steel, $34,950, easily the most secure long-term investment of these. But he does have a Nautilus, so there's a bit of duplication. And he said he would probably ditch his 5711 if he went this route. I would say don't ditch the 5711 if you like to wear your Patek Nautilus in the water, because in general the 5726, you're going to see it on a strap, and that's how you're going to buy it. So you're going to have an additional cost if you want to reverse engineer this onto a bracelet. Now here's what I suggest. You've proffered a number of calendar watches that are all haut de gamme, all great choices, serve different purposes in your collection, and could potentially render different watches you already own redundant. Here are two you weren't considering. The Vacheron Constantin 31-day retrograde perpetual calendar. This is the reference C47031 in platinum. 39 millimeters platinum, beautiful silvered rose lathe guilloche dial, complex calendar. It's a perpetual with Vacheron's perpetual calendar module and a JLC automatic base, which you know I love. Immense complication and easy to read at a glance thanks to the retrograding date and the radial calendar indications. $36,950. It's in the price range you're talking about, but the watch has two things going for it in addition to the rare complication and very wearable and versatile proportions. One, you'll never see another one. This is far less common than any of the other watches in your collection or suggested. Also, Malt-style lugs continue Vacheron's basically 100-year tradition of wristwatches with beautiful and adventurous lug designs. This is a bold watch. It has a lot of visual strength. Vacheron is known for dress watches, but this is not a dainty watch. This is not a shrinking violet. It has immense strength without being flamboyant or overwrought, and it's beautifully tied to the company's own tradition of expressive case and lug combinations. Now, another one, now this is a sporty option, the Glashutte Original Senator Perpetual Calendar, a caliber 100-07 automatic base. This is a watch that came out in the middle of the 2000s, and at $14,500, it allows you to save your bullets for another watch. Off the beaten path, it gives you a sports style complication. I love the fact that it fits your preference, which is clearly expressed in your other choices for dark dials. You get that here. You also get a large 44mm watch, but it's only that size on paper. It wears like a 42. It wears very nicely, even on my 16cm wrist. So it's also appropriate for formal attire. It's not nearly as overpowering and visually brutal as the 46mm IWC Big Pilot. Trust me, this is another one of those cases where bare dimensions lie. It's not 44 versus 46. The IWC wears like it's 50. This wears like it's 42. That's your size delta in practical terms. Also, it features an all-manufacturer movement with easy-to-read aperture calendar. If you're gonna have a complex calendar, I prefer apertures. Like your choice for the 5135G, this is a watch that you can register at a glance without fighting to figure out which little radial display, partitioned into 48 months, 12 months, whatever number of days in a month. Easy watch to read. As easy as it is to read the time, it's just that easy on this aviator style watch to read the date. Again, excellent value, $14,500. I'm sure there's some flexibility in that. Give Josh a call. And finally, a stout satin finished case with a matte black dial. There is a sobriety to this watch that's rare in the oversized sports watch category. It has elegance. This one cleans up nicely in formal attire and gives you a lot of versatility. So consider that. Okay, so here's a question from Troy. And Troy is asking, hey Tim, what would be a cheaper alternative to get into an Omega 321, Le Mans 2310, then the Speedmaster. On that note, is this a case of movement worth more than watch? I would say no. Keep in mind, Omega made many chronographs in the 1950s and 60s. You have a world of old Omegas that you can find with the 321. I think if you go outside the Speedmaster family, you're going to find good selection. Now, granted, that's probably the lowest. That's going to be the entry-level point for a 321. But look for a 1950s or 1960s non-Speedmaster or Speedmaster Professional Omega chronograph. Okay. So many interesting questions coming through. One from Lee Cohen. What do you think of titanium Panerai watches with the tobacco face? I think this is a long-running and fabulous tradition. I want to say, going back to like the PAM 36 and the PAM 40, this is a great combination for Panerai because you don't change the two things that are inviolate for a Panerai purist. One is the shape and the size of the watch. The other is the legibility and the layout of the dial. You can have titanium and you can have a tobacco dial without changing either of those things. And it allows you to have a more wearable Panerai, a Panerai that's a little bit more sober and dialed back in terms of intensity. So if you've got a bigger wrist or you just want to wear it with a suit, it's going to look very natural outside the realm of, you know, diving with a knife in your teeth while fighting off sharks, or, you know, planting mines on British battleships. This is one that's more versatile, more wearable, and doesn't cross any red lines in the minds of a Panerai purist. And the knockdown effect of that is, assuming you're getting just a conventional Panerai Luminor or Luminor Marina with this setup, there's also going to be a good resale market for that combo. Now, once you get into the realm of complications and precious metals, you're on your own. But titanium and a tobacco dial in a Luminor Marina or Luminor base is about as good as it gets. And again, you're still looking at a purebred Panerai that anyone could love. Ultimately, guys, I think that we had an awesome dialogue tonight, and my only regret is that I wasn't able to interact more directly with you guys in the chat box. Let me try to take one more question from EAL15, since he's staying on the Panerai beat, and that's a house specialty at Watch You Want. Could you discuss the Panerai 661 Carbotech, please? The weight durability of the Carbotech. He wants to know about the 661, and I'm going to see if I can find, I swear I have a video of this floating around. Okay, I do. If you want to know in depth what I think of the 661, search for my Watch You Want Watch Reviews channel review of the Luminor 1950 3 days automatic Carbotech PAM 661. Formerly, I've got a backup. I back up myself. This is what I think of the watch. I love the splash of color. The vintage style lume actually works for once. Normally I think this is an affectation. On this watch, I think it's beautiful. I think the splash of blue on the dial on the black base. I think the complexity of the Carbotech with its layers, it's beautiful in inherent and non-duplicative textures. It's like looking at the inside of a redwood tree that's been up for 1,000 years. No two are exactly alike, and yet you get ease of use, you get better durability, in my opinion, than the Panerai ceramic cases. I think they're less likely to chip and fracture. Light on the wrist, wearable on a smaller wrist because of that. Like the basic PAM 40 with tobacco dial and titanium case that I was talking about before, it doesn't violate the central tenets of the Paneristi. It's still easy to read with a classically inspired Panerai Luminor dial, and it has the same classical cushion case profile with the device protecting the crown, the crescent-shaped shell, and the locking crown guard. This is a great watch that I enjoyed reviewing, and for me, if you're willing to stomach the cost and the price premium of the Carbotech, you can't go wrong. I think that materials innovation is where Panerai should go to develop the brand. Complication and precious metals are worth a lot less to the Panerai traditionalist and the Panerai secondary market than a classical case, easy to read dial, and innovations that respect those two. So guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We'll be back Wednesday with Brian Govberg on Wildcard Wednesday. All of you who wrote in, all of you who joined us in the live chat, thank you much. Check out my Watch You Want watch reviews channel with long-term wrist reviews coming soon. I'm Tim, this is Watch You Want, they're the three amigos, and thanks for logging on.